right, good morning, everyone. It's great to see everybody out this morning. We're going to pick up our study in Genesis chapter 44. So if you'd like to follow along in your Bible with me, we'll be reading from Genesis chapter 44. And before we dive into that, let's begin our class with a prayer. Our Father in heaven, we are grateful for the new day and the opportunity to be together as your family. We're so grateful for your word and what you've provided for us. We're thankful, Lord, that we can be forgiven through your Son, that we have a chance of redemption. We pray, Lord, that we will live lives that honor him. We ask for your help this morning that we can see him in your word and understand how we can be more like him, and have a deeper appreciation for what he's done for us. Pray all these things in the name of Jesus. Amen. All right, so a big thank you to Scott for filling in for me on Sunday and Wednesday last week when I was away. So I'm going to do a little bit of review from where we've been so far in the life of Joseph and then pick up here in chapter 44. I've shortened the review slides quite a bit because otherwise it would take up most of our class. But at this point, we know about Joseph that God had given him these dreams, and they were dreams that showed that his family one day would bow down before him. His brothers, of course, hated him for being his father's favorite, hated him for his dreams, and they end up selling him as a slave. But even though Joseph is sold as a slave and he is taken to a foreign country, God is with him. And through the various ups and downs of his life, even when it seems like everything is stacked against him, every step of the way, the Lord is with him and preserves him and continues to provide for him. And not only is God with Joseph because Joseph is a good man and Joseph lives by faith, God is also with Joseph because, again, God gave Joseph these dreams, and God is going to bring about their fulfillment. And we see not only God preserving Joseph physically, providing for him like on an individual level, but also moving events together so that what was foretold will come about. And that comes about. And eventually, Joseph is in charge of all of Egypt. He is the number 2 person in Egypt behind Pharaoh, and he, through that position, saves not only Egypt, but the Bible says all the earth from famine. So people not only in Egypt, but in countries all over the world are able to live and survive because what Joseph does on their behalf. And then we get into what you all covered last week. And so everyone all around the world is coming to Joseph to survive, and that includes his family back home. So back in Canaan, Jacob says, we need some food, and the older brothers now come down to Egypt for food. And there's one person in the world you can go to get food, and that is Joseph. So the brothers come down, and they talk to Joseph. He recognizes them. They do not recognize him. And I know I'm shortening this quite a bit, but at the end of the first visit, Joseph tells them he'll let them go, but they cannot return unless they bring their younger brother Benjamin with them. And Joseph keeps one of the brothers, I believe Simeon, behind, kind of as in his custody. He sends the others back to Canaan, and they go back to their dad. Eventually, they realize they have to go back. So they return with Benjamin, and then Joseph invites them to his home to have a meal with him. And that's where, I believe, chapter 43 ends. So any comments? I know last week, Scott had a ton of content to cover in chapters 42 and 43. Anything anyone would like to add, discuss, questions about anything before we jump into the new material? All right. Excellent. Because if you still had a question, I would not know how to answer it at this point after Scott taught last week. So now we're on to chapter 44. So remember the brothers, they went down once. There was some tension there. They're scared. They made it back home without Simeon. Dad's like, don't go back there again. And if some period of time goes by, and then the brothers like, hey, Dad's like, hey, you got to go down there. Brother's like, well, if we go down there, it's going to be a problem unless Benjamin's with us. And he's like, nope, you're not going to take Benjamin down there. And there's all these kind of problems back and forth. So now Benjamin goes down with the family. They eat this meal with Joseph, and now they leave the next day. So could I have a volunteer, please, to read verses 1 and 2 of chapter 44? We'll see Joseph's plan here. Go ahead.
And he commanded the steward of his house, saying, fill the men's sacks with food as much as they can carry, and put each man's money in the mouth of his sack. Also put my cup, the silver cup, in the mouth of the sack of the youngest, and his green money. So he did according to the word that Joseph had spoken.
Thank you. All right, so remember, here's Joseph. He is at his house. He invites his brothers there to eat. They're kind of looking at each other thinking, this is weird. When they show up, were they excited to go to his house? Do you remember? What did they tell the steward when they showed up at his house? Did they want to go in the front door? No, they're scared, right? They're like, we don't want any part of this, right? And they told him, like, hey, there was this thing about the money. We thought we paid. Somehow, ended up in our bags. We don't know what happened. We don't want any part of this. And they're like, no, it's okay. God gave you money back. And so they were really nervous. But at the end of the last chapter, they're kind of calming down. They're like, okay, well, let's eat lunch. They eat, they hang out, and they eventually relax, and there they are all together. We'll find out that they spend the night, and then they're ready to leave the next morning. And Joseph has this plan, and he tells the steward to do what about the money? They showed up with this money. They paid the money. And what's he say to do with the money? Put it back. So just like last time, Joseph's brothers are given all of their food that they bought, and secretly their money is returned. They put the money as well back in the sack. This is what he did before. The Bible doesn't explain why. We can maybe think of some reasons why. Perhaps he's being kind to them. This is his family after all. Perhaps he's trying to figure out what they do, how they'll respond. But either way, one thing is clear, that by doing this, it shows that Joseph still has a connection to his family, right? He still feels something for his family. If he was apathetic, if he was done with them, do you think he'd invite him back to his house? Would he give him the money back? No. It could have been when he recognized them back in chapter 42. It could have said, and Joseph recognized him, they bowed to him, and then he turned to his servant and said, get these guys their grain, and he walked away and carried on with life, right? That could have happened, but it didn't. And so on some level here, he has feelings and concerns for his family. So just like before, he's giving them back their money. But this time, there's something different. This time, he does something special. And what is going on with the cup, this fancy silver cup that he has? What's he tell the steward to do with that? Yeah, he's like, all right, so take this fancy drink, my silver cup. And in fact, the text says, and put my cup, the silver cup, in this individual's sack. So this is apparently a really fancy thing. And so now this is a little bit different. And I believe, as we'll see this as we go through chapter 44, that this is a test, that Joseph is now testing his brothers to see how they'll respond. So any other comments, questions about this before we see what happens next? All right, so Joseph makes his plan. He talks to his servant, and then we'll see what happens to the brothers. So could someone please read verses 3 to 13? 3 to 13. Volunteers. Okay, go ahead, Drew.
As soon as the morning was light, the men were sent away with their donkeys, and they had gone only a short distance from the city. Now Joseph said to the steward, "Up, follow after the men, and when you overtake them, say to them, I have repaid evil for good. Is it not from this that my Lord drinks, and by this that he practices divination? And you have done evil in doing this." When he overtook them, he spoke to
Thank you very much. So he puts the money back in their sacks. He hides a silver cup in Benjamin's sack. And then it says the next day the brothers leave for Canaan. Now, what do you think they're thinking? I mean, after everything that they've been through, right? They went down to Egypt. They're scared. They're put in custody for 3 days. Simeon's stuck there in custody. They go home. Dad's like, don't go back. You know, I'm losing all my kids left and right. They go back. They're there. They're like, are we going to be arrested? He says, go to his house. But he's like, no, no, no. Then they have this big fancy meal. And they're just kind of looking at each other. What's going on? They spend the night. Nothing happens. They get up next morning, and they're like, let's go home. And they start to go home. They walk down the street, maybe looking over their shoulder. They get out of the city. What are they starting to think at this point, these brothers? Maybe we made it, right? We just might be okay, you know? Maybe one of them's like, hey, guys, do you think, shh, don't say anything yet, right? You know, don't look behind you. Look down, right? Keep going. We're almost there. We're out of the city. Okay, just a little bit longer. I think it's about 3 more hours till we're out of Egypt, right? And we're almost there. Just keep on going, right? And they're probably starting to relax, thinking, I think we made it. I think we made it. And then everything falls apart. Right? Everything falls apart. They are just out of the city. They've only gone a short distance. And Joseph says to his steward, go get them. I want you to overtake them, chase them down, and I want you to accuse them of these things. And when you think about Joseph's steward going and chasing them down, is that the equivalent of, you know, a couple hours from now, out in the parking lot, you see a friend leaving, you're like, hey, before you leave, got a question for you. Right?
No, it would have took a long time.
Yeah. And a lot more serious, right? I mean, is not just a friend saying, hey, I think you forgot something, right? I mean, this is the most powerful person in Egypt, one of the most, after Pharaoh, his servant in his house, chasing somebody down, right? I don't think it was a single guy, like, wait, you forgot something, right? It's probably soldiers involved, right? It's probably powerful people involved.
Probably the horses kicking up dust and they're just trudging along with the camels.
Right. This is not, I guess the point is, this is not something where the brothers would have an option of what they decided to do, right? They can't run from the steward. His servant overtakes him, and he accuses them of stealing Joseph's cup. And he tells them this stuff like, hey, why have you done this? We're so nice to you. Why have you done this back? And don't you realize this isn't just a cup, it's a magic cup, right? And I have magic powers with this, and I'm on to people like you. So it's this very frightening thing that he's told them. And what do the brothers say when they're accused of taking a cup? Yeah, like, what are you talking about? We didn't take any cup. No, there must be misunderstanding. Why would we do this? In fact, they go pretty far. What do they say? Well, they will let happen to the person who has the cup. Yeah, just kill him. Hey, if I've got the cup in my sack, just kill me now, right? I do not have this thing. And so the steward says, okay, well, how about this? He who is found with it will be my servant. The rest of you can go, right? And so they're like, okay, that's all misunderstanding. And they go through all 11 brothers, and they start with the oldest. He puts it down. They search. There's nothing. That's number 1. Number 2, put it down. They search. There's nothing. Number 3, search and there's nothing. Number 4, they search and there's nothing. And so maybe they're feeling more and more relaxed, right? They're like, see, I knew it was a misunderstanding. Who knows what happened, right? But finally they get down to the very youngest, and what do they find? A cup, right? And so they had said, he who has a cup will be my servant. And tragically, the cup is found with Benjamin. And this is the worst possible outcome. Absolute worst possible outcome. I mean, anybody would have been bad, but why is Benjamin especially bad? Yeah, he's a full sibling of Joseph. What did Jacob say to his kids? Don't take Benjamin. Joseph said, you don't show your face back unless you have the little kid with you. And now we got a problem, right?
I wonder if they were thinking this was just too good to be true.
Yeah.
When I was studying disciple story, they were thinking, this is just too good to be true.
Like they almost expected disaster to strike. Yeah, maybe, right? Because they've had so many problems. And now it's happened, right? It's all fallen apart. But notice what the brothers do. I mean, the servant says, okay, found the guy with the cup. He's now in our custody. He's our slave. Rest of y'all go home. You're innocent. Do the brothers go home? No, they do not go home. In fact, they all return with Benjamin to Egypt. Even though he said, even though the brothers said, whoever has a cup that can die and all of us will be your servants, the servant's response is, well, he who's found with it shall be my servant and the rest of you will be innocent. But all these people who would otherwise be innocent now go back with their brother. Which I think says something. Because what did they do differently a few chapters before with Joseph? Right. They got rid of him, and then did they run down to Egypt to go get their brother back? No. Where'd they go? Back to... Gary, you're going to say?
Back home.
They went back home. Yeah, they went back home without their brother. And so they have the opportunity to do that now, right? I mean, they could, if they wanted, been like, well, yeah, sometimes that's how the cookie crumbles, you know? I mean, at least Dad's getting back 10 of us, you know, of the 11 that went down there. Or, all right, anybody got one of Benjamin's cloaks? Because, rip this thing up, find some animal blood, just tell Dad, hey, don't know what happened, another animal, type of thing, right? They could have done that. But instead, they tear their own clothes, right? They don't tear Benjamin's clothes. They tear their own clothes in mourning, and they follow their younger brother back to Egypt. Yes?
Judah may have some influence here, too. He was surety for Benjamin. So, at the end of the day, the brothers were given an opportunity to do what's right and do what's wrong. And this time, they chose the right thing to do.
Yes. For sure. They are making different choices this time around. And we'll see by the end of the chapter even more, just like you're saying, how Judah made that guarantee and how he really steps forward to make that happen. All right, any other comments on this before we keep going? Yes?
Well, Reuben also, he put his children's life up as sacrifice if they did not come back to Benjamin. So he had a lot to lose too.
Yeah, that is true.
Probably to die for his own children.
Yeah, that is true. He made that commitment to Jacob. What's interesting is at the time, what did Jacob say? When Reuben's like, you can kill my kids, what did Dad say? He said, no, be quiet. Right? We're not doing that. But maybe now he's still feeling that, right? That was the first journey. Second journey, he's saying, hey, as the oldest especially, maybe he's like, yeah, he feels that responsibility to go back without him. So yeah, I think they're changing a bit. Yeah.
The thing is, when they headed back home after selling Joseph, they conspired on how to cover it up. Now Joseph, in a sense, is conspired on a way to keep them and make them come back so he's got control of things.
Yeah, that's true. Kind of the tables of turns here, right? For sure. All right, so now let's see what Joseph says when the group returns. Could somebody see verses 14 through 17? 14 to 17. Any volunteers to read that? Go ahead, Gary.
When Judah and his brothers came to Joseph's house, he was still there. They fell before him to the ground. Joseph said to them, what deed is this that you have done? Do you not know that a man like me can indeed practice division? And Judah said, what shall we say to you, my lord? What shall we speak? And how can we be clear ourselves? God has found out the guilt of your servants. Behold, we are my Lord's servants, both we and he also, in whose hand the cup has been found. But he said, Far be it from me that I should do so. Only the man in whose hand the cup was found shall be my servant. But as for you, go up in peace to your father.
All right. So now the boys come back, and again, there's another time where they're falling down before Joseph. It's a little different, though, because before they were bowing down to someone who they recognized his authority, and they're coming to get food. Now they are falling down begging for the life of their brother, which the tables have turned, right? Because there was a time a few chapters ago where their brother was begging them to spare his life. And now they are begging for someone to spare the life of their brother. And what does Judah say? He kind of steps forward and speaks for the group. And what does he say to Joseph?
What can we say? How can we prove our innocence?
Yeah, he's saying, what can we say? Let's think about that for a minute. This is a real different change here. There's no arguing. And this is interesting because just a couple chapters before, when they first came down to Egypt, you remember they were accused. Joseph said, "You all are spies." And their response is what? No, we're not spies. No, we're brothers. We got dad, right? There's 12 of us. Well, there's 11 of us, because one died. But hey, there's 12 of us, and one's back home, and they're they're explaining everything, right? But is there any explanation here from Judah? He's like, no, you got this all wrong. Right? He's trying to explain. Hey, don't you remember, right? When we came to your house, there were 3 tables. Remember the 3 tables? There's the table for you, the big guy. There's a table for us. There's a table for the Egyptians. 3 tables. Cups at your table. We're on this table. Well, we couldn't have grabbed it. We weren't at your table. Which is true. But does he do any of that? No, he simply says, we got nothing. We have nothing that we can say. There's no attempt to argue or explain away anything. And in fact, what does he say about God? God has uncovered their guilt. What? I mean, did they steal anything? No, it was a setup. So are they guilty? What are they guilty of? What's Judah talking about? Who? Selling their brother. Yeah, selling their brother. I mean, they feel that guilt from 20 years ago, right? And it weighs heavy on them. Remember last week when they first were in custody of Joseph, and what did Reuben say to his brothers? Remember? They're panicked. They don't realize Joseph can understand them. And Reuben's like, I told you, right? And you didn't listen. And now we're being punished. That's interesting, isn't it? I mean, this has nothing to do in terms of the current facts with Joseph. This is all about some guy that they think is an Egyptian ruler and a silver cup and a misunderstanding. But man, like that, right? As soon as they're in a jam, their minds immediately go back to that day 20 plus years ago with that little brother begging for his life. And they feel that guilt so strongly. But notice what Judah says here is he says, God has found out our guilt. So he acknowledges, he doesn't go into the details and explain why, but he acknowledges, there's nothing I can say. God's looked on us. We're guilty. Right? We're guilty. Even though he knows that they're not guilty of the cup theft. They're guilty people. And this is different than what Reuben said last week, because there's no, I told you, and you didn't listen to me. It's just, no, we're guilty, right? He acknowledges what he's done, and he accepts the consequences. And it made me think, have we reached that point in life? Have you reached that point in life? Have I reached that point in life? that we are honest enough to finally stop arguing, stop explaining, stop blaming other people? Have we reached a point in life where we're finally honest enough to acknowledge that God knows everything about me, everything I've ever done, all of my failures? And that even in the moment where people treat me unfairly, because it was kind of unfair to Judah, right? I mean, they didn't steal anything. But even when people treat me unfairly, do I admit, you know what? Doesn't really matter. I've sinned plenty in my life. Whatever God decides is fair, that's fair, right? I'll accept God's will for my life. Have we reached that point of spiritual maturity? Because that's a big day. That is a big day when we reach that point. You know, what Judah is doing here really reminds me of the thief on the cross. Remember Jesus on the cross? He had the two thieves. And there's the one guy, the first guy, he's just making fun of Jesus, right? He's yelling at him. He's up there being punished. No responsibility for his own actions. He's not looking at himself the whole time. He's just making fun of Jesus, right? You say you're a king, act like it. Then there's the other guy on the other cross, and he starts off saying nonsense. But eventually he stops. And he says to his, partner over there, hey, don't you fear God? Right? We deserve to be up here. Now, maybe they deserve to be up there. But you know what he could have said? Just like Judah, you know how Judah's like, hey, we don't deserve this. We didn't take a cup. This is all a misunderstanding. You know what the thief on the cross could have said? I don't deserve this. Right? Rome, Caesar, they're a bully, right? Crucifixion, that's not fair. Probably be true, right? I mean, yeah, I'm a thief. Do you know why I stole? I grew up in first century Judah. That's tough, right? We're being occupied by an enemy power. I can't feed my family, right? We're trying to fight back against this oppressive Roman government. It's not fair. Where's my fair trial? Do you think the thief on the cross got a fair trial? I don't know, right? Do you think his punishment matched the crime? I don't know, right? But he probably had a lot of things he could have complained about, a lot of things he could have argued, tried to justify, tried to explain away. But you know what he said there that day when he looked at Jesus and himself? He said, you know what? I look in my life, in the eyes of God, I'm getting what I deserve. I get what I deserve. This guy right here, I don't understand it, but from all I understand, he doesn't deserve this. Right? And they're making fun of him to say he's a king, but I think he is some kind of king. And Jesus, will you please remember me? Right? That's what he did. And that reminds me so much of what Judah and the brothers are doing here. There's no more arguing, none of this, no justifying. They're just like, yo, you know what? Yeah, God knows. And whatever's happening, I deserve it. Right? Which is a huge, huge change for them. So any comments, any thoughts anyone wants to add to that? Yeah, they offer themselves as slaves. Yeah. Judah says, hey, all the brothers, we'll all stay here, right? Yep, we're guilty. Just let us stay here. And what's Joseph say? No, I don't think so, right? They say, oh, all of us will be here. You get 11 slaves. He said, nope. I'm not going to let you all stay. Those of you who didn't steal, you all go home, right? Only Benjamin stays with me. He's the guy who took the cup. He's staying. Yeah.
I wonder if it's apparent to them in their thought process right now that Benjamin's the most innocent and that they're the ones guilty. And that you might be making this in your last slide in the recap, comparing to Jesus being the innocent, Benjamin being the innocent, this circumstance that the sins of their past are catching up to them. Benjamin's not as collateral almost, like he truly is the innocent one who's taking the fall. That can be said about our scenario with Jesus.
Yeah, great point. Because Benjamin, he wasn't involved with the Joseph thing. He's been back home with his dad. They had to beg Jacob to let him bring Benjamin. And yeah, he's kind of collateral damage in all this. which is really sad. Yeah.
Yeah, in the story of Jesus, when he's praying in the Garden of Gethsemane, he says, let this cup pass from me. And, it's kind of a parallel to that story as well.
Yeah. Yeah, very good. Yeah, but Jesus, did that cup belong to Jesus? No. Who should have drunk that cup? Us, yeah, right? Us. But Jesus took responsibility for that, right? And kind of that's a great parallel. That's a great point for what's going on here. Other thoughts? Yeah.
Maybe I missed something in the translation here, but God made a promise in Genesis chapter 3:15 to secure that promise and to bring that promise into fruition. He called Abraham, and as he called Abraham, that plan was put into motion to create a seed where we would be able to identify Jesus as the Christ. And so God says, but your descendants, I'm going to give you this land, but your descendants are going to be slaves for 400 years. And we see God's plan unfolding through the person of Joseph, as God chose Joseph to filter this plan through. And it's amazing to me that the dreams that Joseph had, God allowed these moments, these circumstances, for his brothers to reconfirm on multiple occasions, we are your servants. We are your servants. And so we see the confirmation of God's words in Genesis chapter 15 and verse 13 when he said, your descendants are going to be slaves in a strange land for 400 years. And so we see this plan unfolding in perfection as only God can bring it to fruition.
Yeah, for sure. God, all these events, right, in the control of God coming together. Yeah, very good. All right, yes.
We talked about the guilt that these brothers would have carried for 10 years, but I'm thinking about the peace that comes when you do reach that point that you're talking about. When you finally stop making excuses and fighting and arguing and trying to not take that responsibility, there is an enormous peace that comes when you're doing the right thing, when you're going to the one who
Yeah, for sure. All right, so let's finish up here. Can someone please read verses 18 through 34? We'll finish up the chapter this morning. Go ahead, Matt.
Judah approached him and said, O my lord, may your servants please speak a word in my lord's ears. Do not be angry with your servant, for you are equal with Pharaoh. My lord asked his servant, saying, have you a father or a brother? We said to my lord, we have an old father and a little child in his old age. Now his brother is dead, so he alone is left with his mother, and his father loves him. Then you said to your servant, bring him down to me, that I may set my eyes on him. We said to my lord, the lad cannot leave his father, for if he should leave his father would die. You said to your servant, however, unless your youngest brother comes down with you, you will not see my face again. Thus it came about when we went up to your servant my father, we told him the words of my lord. Our father said, go back, buy us a little food. We said, we cannot go down, for our youngest brother is with us. Then we will go down. We cannot see the man's face unless our youngest brother is with us. Your servant, my father, said to us, you know that my wife bore me 2 sons. The one went out from me, and I said, surely he is torn in pieces, and I have not seen him since. If you take this one also from me, and harm befalls him, you will bring my gray hair down to Sheol in sorrow. Now therefore, when I come to your servant my father, and the lad is not with us, since his life is bound up in the lad's life, and he sees that the lad is not with us, he will die. Thus your servants will bring the gray hair of your servant our father down to Sheol in sorrow. Your servant became surety for the lad to my father, saying, if I do not bring him back, then let me bear the blame for my father forever. Now therefore, please let your servant remain, instead of the lad, a slave to my lord, and let the lad go up with his brothers. For how shall I go up to my father if the lad is not with me? For I fear that I see an evil that will overtake my father.
Thank you. So Joseph says, nope, all of you go home, go in peace. Only the little kids stay. right? The youngest. And then Judah, he had spoken for the group before. Now it says he went up to Joseph, verse 18. So he now on his own goes up, humbles himself before Joseph, and pleads with him. And notice what he says. He explains how much Jacob loves Benjamin. He recounts everything that's happened, this kind of back and forth between the Egyptian ruler and the brothers, and the importance of this boy to his father. And then he says, I know Benjamin has to stay here, but please, I will take his place. Right? I made this promise. I will stay behind. I will be the servant here. Please let the little boy go back to his father. Let the kid go home. He had your cup, but you can punish me for what was in his sack. It's tremendous self-sacrificing love here on the part of Judah. And I know we've talked about how Joseph is kind of like foreshadowing Jesus in many ways, but Judah's statement here really foreshadows what Jesus does on our behalf, right? In a big way, Jesus looked at all the world, all of God's creation, and said, yeah, I know they've sinned. They have the cup, so to speak, in their sack. But let's let these people go back home to their Father. Let's let these people go back to God, and I'll take the consequences on their behalf. Right? And what Judah does in a small way here is what Jesus does in a large way in its perfection for all of us. And quickly here, I just want to show you how Judah has changed. I mean, it's amazing. Yes, well, can people change? Yeah, people can change. Remember all the things that, things Judah's been involved with? Look what's happened. Back in chapter 37, he didn't care what happened to Joseph. He didn't care if he lived, died. In fact, he wanted to make money. So it was Judah's idea. Let's sell this guy, right? Because, I need some cash. And then afterwards, he lies to his dad about what happens. Now in chapter 44, he cares about what happens to Benjamin. He doesn't care about making money. Instead, he's willing to personally pay the price to secure Benjamin's release. And he's sensitive to his father's concerns and his father's pain. So he just doesn't lie to his dad. He cares about his dad. Look how Judah was in chapter 38. Remember, he's scared about what's going on with Tamar, and so he kicks her out, and he sends her away. He's like, I don't know, my first son died, my second son died, there's something weird, this girl's cursed. Tamar, why don't you go back home to your mom and dad, right? I thought Tamar was part of your family. I thought she was your daughter-in-law. I thought you had the responsibility to provide for her. No, you get out of here, right? I'm scared. And remember, he doesn't keep his promise to Tamar. He makes this kind of non-serious promise. Oh, yeah, when my youngest is ready, we'll call you, Tamar. We'll call you, right? And then later he's like, I never gave my youngest to her, right? I lied. Well, look, he's scared here. He's very scared. He tore his clothes. He's afraid. But you know what? He stays with Benjamin. He doesn't send, like he sent Tamar away. He doesn't say, well, sorry, Benjamin. He sticks with him. And he keeps his promise to Jacob. So unlike Tamar, who he lied to, keeps his promise to his father. So can people change? Yeah. They can change. Only God knows what's in our hearts. But when I was thinking about Judah and his brothers, I thought of this proverb. The crucible is for silver, the furnace is for gold, but the Lord tests hearts. Has Joseph been putting his brothers through the ringer these last couple chapters? Yeah, right? They have been tested for sure. And what has Joseph discovered about his brothers? Are they the same people they were back in the day when they threw him in a pit? No, right? They have grown. They have changed. And they are not who they were before. And what an amazing thing, what an encouraging thing, right? You can't find a family more messed up than Jacob's family. Can't find someone more unstable than Judah, right? But they changed, right? They changed. And the wonderful thing is that we can change. And the great question is, what will God learn about us when he tests us? All right, so we'll see what happens next class when Joseph reveals himself to his brothers. So we will see you on Wednesday. Thanks.